about Roland Martin Unfiltered on Tuesday, May 21st, 2019. I'm Dr. Julianne Malveaux, sitting in for Roland Martin, and on today's show, an analysis of New York City's early voting plans so it will favor white and affluent voters and make it more difficult for low-income voters. Omarosa says Donald Trump's 2016 campaign paid most of the women who wanted to work nearly 20% less than their male counterparts. She's filing suit. Hey, if you lie with pigs, you get dirty. Just saying. The battle for abortion rights continues with hundreds of abortion rights activists rallying in front of the Supreme Court. And what the hell? I mean, seriously, is consensual rape? What y'all talking about? According to Republican Missouri State Representative Barry Hovis, it happens. I can't stop from laughing on that one. Consensual rape. Like, I wanted you to rape me. Whatever. Plus, while the Morehouse class of 2019 is celebrating their graduation gift of no student loan debt, the average black graduate has more than $7,400 more in debt than their white peers. And a new report shows that Black Virginians were charged with disorderly conduct more compared to white residents. Not just in Virginia. D.C., we got a similar story. But hey, let's bring the funk. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the fine. And when it breaks, he's right on time. And it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. Yeah, it's Uncle Roro, y'all. Yeah, it's Roland Martin. Yeah, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best. You know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
The New York Civil Liberties Union, Common Cause New York, and the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law sent a letter this week to the New York City Board of Elections, saying their plans for early voting favors the rich and affluent and puts undue burden on the city's low-income voters. Voters in predominantly white Richmond County, home to Staten Island, will have substantially greater access to polling locations than any other county in the 5 boroughs. Queens, a majority-minority county, has 4 times as many registered voters as Richmond County, but they have the same number of polling places and have to walk more than half an hour to reach their polling places. Joining me to talk about this disparity is John Greenbaum, Chief Counsel and Senior Deputy Director for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered, John. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me on, Julianne.
So tell me about this study. Tell me why you have this disparity.
Well, we don't know the why.
Okay.
But one of the things that we wanted to do when we first heard about the fact, first of all, there are not enough early voting sites. When you think about the fact that the city of New York has more than 5 million registered voters and that there are only 38 early voting sites, that's simply not enough. And even the law says you're supposed to have, for every 50,000 voters, one early voting site. In New York has well over 100,000 voters per early voting site, close to 150,000 voters per early voting site. So not enough sites. And then the distribution of sites, as you quoted from part of our letter, is inequitable. It was a big move for the state of New York to move to early voting. It became the 39th state to do that this year, and it's been long overdue. And minority voters, particularly African-American voters, we see prefer to vote early and in person. We did a study a number of years ago in Cleveland in the 2008 presidential election, and black voters voted early at a rate of 26 times that of white voters in Cuyahoga County, where Cleveland is, in the 2008 presidential election. So there are problems with this plan that the New York City Board of Elections has trotted out, and there's time to fix it. And so we want them to fix it in time for the elections this fall.
So give me a timeline. They've said that they've set up these polling places. They didn't even release them. They read them, counting on journalists to transcribe them as opposed to releasing a list. But when can this be changed? Who gets to change it? Is it Mayor de Blasio? Is it someone else? How does this get fixed?
Well, in the first instance, again, it's the New York City Board of Elections that can fix this. There's time to do it. There's still months left before the election this fall, and it's their job to fix it. And we've raised these issues with them. We've asked them for information, sort of to provide backup, and also to give them an opportunity to add more sites and to allocate the sites in a way that's fair and equitable.
How much power do y'all have in this? I mean, you said you've asked the question, but who enforces?
Well, it starts with the New York City Board of Elections, and if they don't remediate it, we have options available to us, including litigation. And that's something that we would definitely consider if what the board does in the end is not gonna give voters what they need.
So the early voting for the primary in New York is when?
It's going to be this fall.
Okay, so this is challenging. You have 3 or 4 months. What you gonna do?
Well, this can be done. I mean, we're going to give the board the first shot at fixing this. We've raised these issues, and of course, we're not the only ones that have raised these issues, but we formalized it in a letter. We provided some details. We're willing to work with them, and we'll see what the reaction is. And as I said, if the reaction is something less than what voters need, then we'll look at other options, including litigation. And we are certainly not afraid to sue the New York Board of Elections. We've done it before.
Okay, John Greenbaum, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate that. We appreciate your work. And joining me now on our panel is Cleo Monago. He is a social political analyst and activist. We have Malik Abdul, Vice President of the Black Conservative Confederation. Okay, and we have Kelly Bethea, communications strategist. Okay, I'm not trying to give him shade, but I always give him shade. What can I say? So, Cleo, you heard about this. This is a pattern. It's consistent with what's been happening with voter suppression at some level. What do you say?
I'm glad Mr. Greenbaum and his team are going to address it, but the question I have is, why was it broke? I think it's important to unpack these situations that, particularly in this day and age, do not seem to be coincidences. What happened? Why are we playing catch up when there's been an issue like this that's been a problem for some time? So I want to know what broke it and what occurred, because you cannot fix something on a permanent basis if you don't realize what led to it in the first place. It can default back into the same situation. So
Exactly.
that's my concern.
Malik, your people are the ones who are doing this voter suppression. Your people.
What happened? What city did this happen in again?
It did happen, but I'm just saying, your people have been consistently. Let me have your thought. Let me not diss you. Let me just have your thought.
And y'all's people, New York City, the bastion of liberalism, this is something that is happening in New York City. Just as I said, whether it's happening in a conservative state or in this case, New York City, these things shouldn't happen. What the guy was, the previous...
John Greenbaum,
John
yes.
Greenbaum, yes. What he was talking about as far as just the availability of polling places and things like that, these things should be bipartisan. There should be, no political leanings when we're talking about people having access.
But it's beyond bipartisan. It also should be absent of class. This
absolutely.
is clearly, Staten Island, Queens, white people, Manhattan, Bronx, black people, brown people. So when you have the same number of polling places in a place where you have fewer people than this other place, you're sure to say, I'm gonna make it easier for you and more difficult for you.
Yeah, it's hard to say that there's any equity in that. It's hard to even defend it, at all.
So I commend you for not defending it. Kelly.
No, I agree with my panelists here. When Greenbaum mentioned, or answered rather, why things are the way they are, and he's like, we don't know why. I think we know why.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
We don't
pretty
know.
clear.
We
why.
always know why.
We always know why. And I just wish that, I understand that he's leading the effort and is commendable, absolutely. But at the same time, I wish somebody of a lighter hue would just, admit that it's because of systemic racism, because that's what it is.
Well, it's race and class in this case.
Both. It is definitely both. But in terms of this particular city, like, the class and the race is almost synonymous with each other given the demographics and where people live. So,
And how much money.
And how much.
Who makes what money.
Right.
Yeah.
And who pulls what political strings?
Yeah, I just wish that he would just say, hey, it's traces of, some systemic racist crap that we've been dealing with for 400 years now.
And like I said earlier, that he won't articulate it creates the environment where it could happen again because
Exactly.
no one's being concrete
Exactly.
about this is the problem right here that we must remedy and prevent so this won't happen again. Oh, I don't know. Well, I don't know, Lisa. I don't know outcomes.
Right.
You always got it. Now, I'm going to try not to crack up as I read this prompter copy. The Trump campaign paid women, employees,
You know what?
nearly 20% less than their male counterparts. I'm trying to be Roland and just like, this is some funny spit. I said spit, y'all. I didn't curse on the air. According to a court filing this week, the filing is part of a federal lawsuit by Alva Johnson, a black woman who worked on Trump's campaign, claims that he kissed her without consent. Well, since he grabs. I mean, kissing is like minimal. At a campaign rally in August of 2016. Okay. Johnson is alleging gender and race discrimination in her lawsuit. Omarosa Manigault Newman, who worked on Trump's campaign as director of African American outreach, has submitted a declaration in Johnson's case backing her effort. Okay, did I do okay with that?
You did as best as you could. I commend you.
Cleo, my brother, help me out with this.
Well, I might get on your nerves when I say that I'm not one of these Omarosa haters.
Well, me neither. I just find her amusing.
I think Omarosa, just like I think this is true for this brother here, cares about black people and has a whole other approach to dealing with the issue that I couldn't stomach personally, but I often can't stomach the Democratic Party also, so let me make that clear. But I think that these people were trying to do what they thought was going to be helpful to black people inside of that place and learn the hard way that it wasn't going to work. So now they're trying to sue where they see inequity.
But okay, when you lay with dogs, you rise with fleas. That's what my grandma
Right,
always
but
say. So the man was a genital grabber. He was a serial whatever, in addition to being a 10,000 liar. And you expected him to act like he had good sense for you?
I mean, not necessarily good sense, but certainly some sense of decorum, especially when you're running for president of the United States.
Sense of decorum,
I
Kelly?
didn't say that I believe this. I'm just going from...
Sense of decorum?
Decorum is relative.
Trump's strategy worked. I don't know what y'all talking about. He's the
That's what I'm
president.
saying. So
It did work.
His
yeah.
strategy worked.
Now, so Omarosa's involvement in the lawsuit, I don't know her personally. I never met her at all. If there's an issue, I think we've heard something like this with the Hillary Clinton campaign and maybe even the Bernie Sanders campaign as the pay gap between what men and women.
Okay.
So this is not anything new. I do know that Omarosa left the White House as one of the highest paid staffers at about $179,000 a year.
Making the same amount as many white men were making.
All
Because
of
that
the
was
white-
like
what-
yeah.
John Bolton, Sarah Sanders, Hope.
Because that's the cap salary there.
Yes,
especially
We're
for-
talking about before
Yeah, we're
he
talking-
Yeah,
got
before-
in.
She was
before.
she
Yeah.
was making, I think she said $7,000 a month, and there was a white guy who was making $11,000 a month. and
Yeah,
so that was the
so-
gap.
But
He
I don't
said-
think that I don't know if that that may be true. But these type of things, as far as pay gaps on campaigns, this is not a new story.
No.
So
No.
So your point is that Trump ain't the only bad guy, right?
Oh yeah, if he's a bad guy at all, because I think the Hillary
Well,
Clinton
he's a bad
campaign,
guy.
they explained.
Wait a minute, if he's a bad guy
the,
at all.
Well, no, you're absolutely. Pay discrimination is not has no partisan face. Pay discrimination, when you look at the aggregate data, 80% women make about 80% of what men make, aggregatively. And when we look at even MBAs coming out of grad school, with their offers, you're getting between a 10 and 20% differential.
Wow.
Same qualifications, went to the same schools, but part of it is that women don't bargain. Men get an offer, they say, is that all? They say, give me more. And if they really want, women say, oh, I'm going to Disneyland. Get happy.
Well, I'm not sure that analysis is relevant to most black men or a lot of black men. This is coming from interviews and experience. Some black men are very glad to be there in corporate whatever and get ulcers and all kinds of stuff from tolerating the racist BS, including not getting raises and not getting like all the black people work at CNN, for example, they still sweeping. You know, they have never made it to the top of the Caucasian News Network, CNN.
The Caucasian News Network.
You know, I don't know if it's anyway, I think I made my point.
I think you made your point. I think you're absolutely right. I think that people who think they have power feel like they have power to negotiate. That would be basically white men. I think that white women, black men, other people of color do not necessarily feel that they have the power to negotiate. They just happen to be there. And so you get an offer,
so
they
long
take it.
for us to get there.
Right.
You know, you have to fight, and you basically have to negotiate just to get to the table. And then once you actually get to the table and get the contract or whatever, I mean, there could be like a level of mental exhaustion there. You know, just
That's a really good point.
you know, like I've been in plenty of situations where it's like you have to fight just to be heard, and then you finally get heard and they agree with you, and you have the opportunity to bargain and negotiate and stuff, but it's like the adrenaline's gone.
And I will say it would have been great, and of course, you know, you can't turn back time, but it would have been great to hear Omarosa as she was going around the country campaigning about the greatness of Donald Trump to talk about those things.
Can I roll my neck, please?
Well, that wouldn't work. That would have been that would have created a schism.
I mean, she could have made it to the White House if she said that.
That's my point. But I want to say, from my observation, that I think, since we keep talking about gender and power and audacity, I think that there's
And caucasity.
caucasity, if you will. I think there's more white women who are willing to bargain than black men.
Well, of course.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I remember, you know, I'm old, so I remember back in the day there was a cover of Black Enterprise in the 80s. It had a white woman and a black man arm wrestling. And my point was, where the black woman? Probably laying on the ground somewhere because she wasn't even being considered. And when you look at wages, white men at the top, white women, black men, almost equivalent, and then black women at the bottom. So white women are the mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives of the white men who are in charge.
Exactly.
And they therefore are empowered. African American men, when they're able to make that testosterone connection, when they're able, which is not always, are able to do something, but many are not.
Yeah, sometimes testosterone is interrupted by social castration.
Ooh, Cleo Monago, I'm not fooling with you today. I'm not fooling. He throws it down. We're going to move on. At castration, I don't know. I've been doing this research on lynching, so you got me there. Abortion rights activists, including Democrats who want the party presidential nomination in 2020, rallied at the Supreme Court on Tuesday to protest new restrictions on abortion passed by Republican-dominated legislatures in 8 states. Alabama passed an outright ban last week, including for pregnancies resulting from rape or incest, unless a woman's life is in danger. Other states, including Ohio and Georgia, have banned abortions absent a medical emergency after 6 weeks of pregnancy or after the fetus's heartbeat can be determined, which may happen even before a woman realizes she's pregnant. And Democratic Louisiana Governor John Edwards has signaled his support for an anti-abortion bill that will ban the procedure after 6 weeks. Here's what some of the folks at the rally had to say.
This is a day in America where we must understand there can be no neutrality. Do you stand with freedom or do you stand with tyranny? Do you stand with self-determination or do you stand with the kind of laws that take away liberty, that take away freedom, that take away your own economic choices? This is an assault on the ideals of our nation.
Okay, y'all. So there was a rally, a lot of energy, but you know, and most Americans believe that women have a right to choose. But the Republicans have gone cray-cray. Malik, how come your people have gone cray-cray?
Well, I think that I don't agree with. I have a. It's
I pick on you so bad, don't I?
No. It's not, because it's really hard to. I won't say hard to explain it, but I consider myself pro-life. But then I ask myself, if my daughter, my 12-year-old daughter, if she was raped,
Yes.
and forced to bear that child, how would I feel about that? I don't know. I don't have kids. So even though I do acknowledge and I accept being pro-life, I'm the same way, but I'm the same way on the death penalty, though. I don't agree with the death penalty. But, it's...
The wrong brother do the wrong thing.
Well, no,
That's trying to say?
No, I just don't agree with the death penalty overall.
Well, see, the hypocrisy partially is that if you are so, not you personally, but when people say they're pro-life, but they agree with the death penalty, so what life
Right.
you pro?
And
then
I get
furthermore,
it.
when a child is born, so you love this fetus, but you don't love the child.
Right.
Right.
And it's hard for me to say, when, there's a lot of debates going on as far as when is, the heartbeat begins and things like that. But it's hard for me, just in my pro-life stance, to accept the notion that when I meet a woman, and she just found out she was pregnant or something, or, a member of my family, that they don't have an actual child. They're not with child at that point. Some people argue, well, it's a clump of cells, or, it's just kind of, I get that kind of feeling when I have this, this sort of discussion. But even Donald Trump, our president, felt that the Alabama law actually went
I'm trying to figure out how many abortions he's paid for, but I'm not going to go there.
Oh, my gosh.
Kelly.
Well,
I'm just saying. I mean, he was a man about town. He believes in grabbing genitalia.
Well, we know he's not as conservative as the rest of his party.
I don't think he's conservative at all. I think he's
Miss Kelly, tell us
contrarian.
about this. What do you think about this rally? These states that have passed these laws, which are not going to, basically not going to have scrutiny. What they're going to do is they're trying to move to the Supreme Court.
Right.
What's your thought?
I think that even though I respect Malik and other men's view on this subject, it's not about them, because this is my body.
Yes.
If I decide that I don't want to have a child, that is my decision. And yes, it takes two to create a kid. Yes, you had some contribution there. But I was telling a friend this earlier this weekend. I said, think of me as a house, and all you did was give me a crayon for an art project.
Woo.
But you want my art project, even though I don't want my art project, and it's in my house. You're telling me I can't throw out my stuff in my house because you gave me a crayon.
Ooh, Cleo.
Well, even though, and I respect your perspective in terms of men influencing whatever you do with your body, period, the Alabama governor's a woman.
And that makes it even dicier.
And she is a woman who, from my perspective, is pro-life in terms of all life that's white.
Well, she's pro-life, but not pro-health.
Right.
Medicare, pro-food.
Right. But she is pro, from my perspective, the survival of the white race. And as I said others before, there was a period in time where the people were blowing away doctors at the abortion clinics, but they weren't blowing away none of the doctors in the black community. All those doctors who were killed were in white communities and putting white children at risk for being killed based on their rhetoric. So I want to be real clear about, because we already talked about white women earlier in terms of their involvement
Their caucasity.
in this whole, the caucasity.
Caucasity.
And I just want to bring that in there, because this is not always, particularly when it comes to white supremacist aims, divided based on gender.
Right.
It's divided based on race, and it's divided based on race survival, and the reason that they're supportive of abortion, not supportive of abortion, and some of them have killed abortion doctors because they feel like they were interfering with the reproduction of white folks.
No, and I definitely agree with that. I definitely feel like it's a combination of both race and gender, especially in Alabama, given the fact that the governor is a woman. But at the same time, it's one of those situations where if this bill if this law actually does come to pass, like it's actually going to be enforced. I don't think it's going to be enforced. I think this is very academic conversation because it can't go anywhere because right now it's unconstitutional. But let's just say it does work. It's not going to benefit the white race because who is actually going to be getting them? You know,
No, but what it's going to
rational
do at the end of the
and
day,
logical.
the challenge to me from an economic perspective is that this is a tax on poor people,
Right.
especially poor black people. So a white girl who is raped, white woman who is raped, can get on an airplane and come to New York, D.C., Illinois, wherever you have.
Right, they will find a way.
But a sister, even now, the number of clinics in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, people have to drive a day to get to a clinic. And some of these places have imposed rules that say you have to wait 24 hours. So
Yep.
that means now you have to add a hotel stay. And so it's a tax on, and I wonder, Cleo, I wonder if there's something that allows folks that the behind this is not about the survival of the white race, but the re-enslavement of the black race. Because when someone who is unwanted comes into this world, it's going to be drama. They will likely 50-50 be incarcerated. What happens with incarceration? You basically end up with a unpaid labor force allowed to make. It's just my crazy brain working. But you tell me.
Well, no, I think
your crazy brain sometimes works like my crazy brain.
I think your crazy brain is brilliant, personally. But anyway, white supremacy aims, the myth of it, it's not a perfect science. It's never been implemented in ways that was flawless, but they do try. That's one of the reasons why Donald Trump is president. It's one of those attempts to get what they want. So you're right in terms of how it affects black people and how it's going to negatively affect white people. But as we already know, there's some people who are so broke they couldn't afford their front teeth who voted for Donald Trump. And who still support Donald Trump because it goes back again. As a matter of fact, I saw an article recently that mentioned that there was people in that crew who preferred status over money. The status of the myth of white supremacy and being over everybody else in terms of superiority than being able to eat. That fractured ego issue is very, very significant here.
There's a book out now called Dying from Whiteness, where it's white folks who would prefer to die than have us have health insurance.
Well, I just want to say that there are a lot of poor people with no teeth in their mouth who vote Democrat and have been doing so for years. So just wanted to make that clarification.
That was a very specious point.
Well, I'm just saying,
It
because
is.
if we're talking about
It is.
specific policies, then we can look at the policies in many of our cities, many of our inner cities, where there's poverty, poor education, crime,
But let's
and
not-
all of these things, and they
But
continue
let's
to
not
vote
miss-
Democrat.
Let's
So
not
it's
miss,
not.
let's not miss the point that's being diverted.
No, I
by
get
But
that
he's going to
point.
miss the point because he missed his point. Kelly.
That's not.
Kelly.
I mean, I think I pretty much made my point earlier. Because, again, one, it's an academic conversation because I don't think that it's actually going to be enforced the way it wants to be enforced before it hits the Supreme Court.
Except for the fact that we've got clinks in the armor. With now you got to come from Alabama, you got to come from Missouri, you got to come from all these places.
Right.
So really, the effort is to get it to the Supreme Court.
No, absolutely. It's
Right.
going to get there, but
Right.
for
It may
right
get
now.
there. It may not even
and it
make
may
it
not.
past the
Appeals courts may say.
But
Right.
yeah, but I do want to say that, I don't think we are ever going to find, just full agreement on the matter at all, especially with men and women. But for me personally, if something is mine, it's hard for me to accept that someone tells me that, just because, I'm the one who's carrying it, so I don't have the same level of input as to what
well, no,
happens
you
to
don't.
the child.
You know what?
You don't.
Yeah.
Here's the bottom line, y'all. If you don't like abortion, don't have one. That's the end of the day for me. If you don't like, I don't understand why people get into other people's Kool-Aid like that. If you
Because
don't like
they want
abortion,
the
don't
Kool-Aid
have
to be
one.
white. Dr. Malvo.
Well, first of all, that
I
sounds
don't know
like
about
milk.
that.
They want
That's
white
just
Kool-Aid.
weird.
That's why
that
they
sounds
get
like
into people's
milk,
Kool-Aid.
white Kool-Aid.
No, I said getting into people's Kool-Aid.
No, he says the Kool-Aid
said
white.
it sounds
All right, y'all.
Don't.
All right, we're going to move on. We're just going to move on. So, Republican Missouri State Representative Barry Hovis used the term consensual rape when arguing in favor of a proposal that would ban abortions in the state after 8 weeks of pregnancy, even in cases of incest or rape. Later, he apologized, but you have to wonder, what was this fool thinking? Let's see the video.
by having this point not start until 8 weeks. Let's just say someone goes out and they have, or they're raped or they're sexually assaulted one night after a college party. Because most of my rapes were not the gentleman jumping out of the bushes that nobody had ever met. That was 1 or 2 times out of 100. Most of them were date rapes or consensual rapes, which were all terrible. But I'd sit in court when juries would struggle with those type of situations where it was a he said, she said, and they would find the person not guilty. Unfortunate if it really happened, but I had no control over that because it was a judge or a jury making those decisions. But let's just say someone is sexually assaulted. They have 8 weeks to make a decision. I've never really studied it, but I've heard of the morning after pill, where if someone feels that they've been sexually assaulted, they could go do that. Gives them ample time in that 8 weeks to make those exclusions, which I may not be comfortable with, but it does give those people that exclusion.
I have to, and I wasn't going to speak on this because honestly, as a person, I am personally pro-life. I am a black woman with lupus. I'm not even sure if I can have children. It's not a child that I don't lay eyes, and God knows I love children. And it's not a child that I lay my eyes on that I don't want. However, that doesn't mean that I get to force anyone to have a child. But let me say this right here and right now. There is no such thing as consensual rape.
You go, my sister. You know what? This man is a hot monkey fool. Just a hot monkey fool. I mean, seriously, consensual rape. But did you hear the part where he said most of my rapes?
Most of my rapes. That's what got me.
Flowers and rapes.
Okay, Kelly, I got to start with you. This is just like cray-cray to the cray-cray.
I mean, but he's not the first person to say something like this, right? There was another representative and another state legislator who said legitimate.
It was Missouri. It was also Missouri.
Legitimate rape.
Okay, don't get raped in Missouri, y'all.
You know, like, don't get raped at all, please. But like,
never mind.
I just feel like I wish people would just leave women alone.
Not gonna happen.
You know, I know it's not going to happen, but I can still wish it.
But you know, that this man would move his mouth and form his lips to say, most of my rape.
Most of my rape.
So he just told on his whole self. Cleo?
White supremacists are sociopaths and psychopaths. So he was just demonstrating how they think. What I hope people don't get played by is his apology. Because people apologize for CYA purposes. Y'all know what CYA means, right? Because Asians, no, I'm just kidding. It means covering your...
We got it. We got it. Cover your hind parts.
Cover your hind parts. CYB or HS, something. But anyway, the bottom line is that what these people say, like I think James Baldwin said, or someone said, don't watch what they do, watch what they say. Or watch what they say. One of them cliches. Bottom line is that the man expressed this, and I'm glad the sister corrected him, but he said what he felt. And there's other people who feel that way.
Well, his apology wasn't even a real apology. He said he meant to say, quote, date rape or consensual or rape, rather than consensual rape.
He shouldn't even say that.
But he said, it's my apology if I didn't say or enunciate the word or. I said, that doesn't help you. That doesn't help you at all.
Malik, come on.
We've been here before.
We've been
it's
here
your people
before.
too, by the way.
Well, I don't think it has anything to do with people. I think it's just I think it's a man thing. I think it's more so a gender thing than it is a race thing. Men being able to articulate certain points of view.
So you just tell me all men crazy?
I'll accept him.
I'll accept him
if he say he's misspoke. You know, we've had many instances where people say that, they say something and then they say they misspoke and they come back and apologize for it. What he said, it was ridiculous on his face. It makes absolutely no sense. We all know that.
Do we?
Well, of course we all. Well, we should hope that no one believes that something like consensual.
But he said it.
I don't
He
do
said
it.
it, and his apology was specious.
But we have people.
It had nothing to do.
We have people who make these half ASS apologies for things that they should not have said. So I'll accept him for saying, okay, well, he doesn't really mean that there's a thing.
There are men who think they should rule over women.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that they should
But it
have.
doesn't mean that he's one.
It doesn't matter what the woman wants.
Because he said that.
Because of the fact it doesn't matter what the woman wants, it cannot be rape. Because her perspective and her resistance is irrelevant.
And there's no such
And
I think we should illuminate that kind of thinking and not let somebody off the hook who thinks like this just because they...
With a half-behind apology.
Yeah,
With a half-behind
exactly.
apology. You know what, y'all? We could argue this one. Because I just want to get a slice of that dude. I mean, I would love to be in a small room with him Never mind. I was told by my nephew that I'm over 60 and I'm not supposed to brawl with people no more.
Who said?
One of my nephews, he said, you know, your bones are brittle, Auntie. Stop threatening people.
You take some calcium and just knock them one good time.
There you go.
Like,
There you go. We're
I
gonna
got
take
you.
Okay, you got my back. We're going to do it. We're going to roll it. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back. Just a quick break.
You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.
So it's commencement season at HBCUs around the country, and the speakers left them with some powerful messages. None quite as powerful as the one Robert Smith left with the Morehouse class of 2019, his class, he said, by paying off their student loans. Here are some of our favorites.
Don't accept what others put on you. Project what is in you to be and live up to the dreams in your head about who you can be. You wouldn't have a dream if it was not possible for you to make it come true.
As graduates moving ahead to the next phase of your lives, each of you can embrace values that inspire you while you pursue your own dreams. Some of you will shift to the workforce and some into graduate school, some to embark on great adventures and some to pursue entrepreneurial ambitions. In whatever comes next, you can choose to adopt a community spirit, principles of public service, and a down-home ethic of empathy for others. It is important to always remember that the world is yours, not just to inhabit, but also to shape and craft and develop and mold into a better place for them yourselves.
Spelman College class of 2019, as women who have made the choice to change the world, know that when you use your voice, there will be many who will try and silence you because they refuse to see you. They will try and silence you because they are in disbelief of the power within you. They will try and silence you because they are afraid of you. They will try and silence you simply because they do not value or understand you. In response, use your curiosity to seek the truth and your intellect to dissect the difficult. Use your strength to dismantle systems of oppression and your inner beauty to attract goodwill. Use your courage to battle injustice and your voices to speak truth to power.
These young people are moving into their future at a time when the student loan crisis has risen to the forefront of the national conversation. Democratic presidential candidates have been placing affordable college front and center in their campaigns. Americans currently owe almost $1.6 trillion in student loan debt, more than auto loans or credit card debt. An average African-American graduate has $7,400 more in debt than their white peers, and the debt continues for years after they graduate. Joining me to talk about the issue is Dr. Lawrence Potter. He is the Chief Academic Officer and Provost at the University of the District of Columbia. Welcome, Dr. Potter.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Malveaux.
So you saw your commencement, and we had a wonderful time there with Dr. Maxine and Dr. Reverend Jackson, 42 times Dr. Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. They both gave a charge to young people, but this debt issue is an issue that isn't going to go away. What's your perspective?
Well, I think we have to fully understand that, number one, African Americans are not born with intergenerational wealth. And so the very act of a Robert Smith paying off the debt for African Americans in the 21st century is not simply paying it forward, he is simply honoring the cause. If you look at most of the institutions in this country, it's quite pricey. And when you compare public versus private education, right here in the university, in the city of of the District of Columbia. There's only one public institution. And when you think about the founding of this particular district and the opportunities to access, it's very clear to me in the 21st century that if we're going to level the playing field, if equity is going to be part of the manifesto, then people are going to have to step up. And that's just what Robert Smith did. He stepped up to the plate to honor the cause.
But even if a dozen Robert Smiths stepped up, that $1.6 trillion in student loan debt, they can't chip away at. What should happen from a public policy perspective to get rid of this debt?
So I think that there are a couple of things. We need to really think about how we view higher education in terms of a 21st century model, right? It was not designed for us. And so when you consider the shifting demographics, when we talk about parity, higher ed for me means that we're going to have to think about multiple kinds of ways in which students have access to achieve their career ideas or their career goals. And the reality is that that doesn't always equate to a baccalaureate degree. There are credentials. We can do stackable credentials. Individuals in today's world are able to make a whole lot of meaning out of life with passion in a job. And so it's not just about being a doctor or an attorney, but it's really about rethinking higher ed and putting the offerings out there and creating opportunities for young people to be able to amass what it is that they think that they want to do.
One of the things about UDC that's exciting is that it is a public institution, so students are not taking out the same kind of debt that they might take out at a Howard or a more, at our private institutions. You also have several paths to success. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. There are 3 doors of entry at the University of the District of Columbia. We have workforce development, we have our community college, which is a branch campus of the main campus, and then of course we have the traditional aged undergraduate programs that lead through a master's and a doctoral degrees. The reality is that our workforce development or lifelong learning programs are free to residents of the district. So we are subsidizing that. And those programs are continuing education units. It allows individuals to kind of off-ramp, on-ramp, to continue to better themselves in their career paths. At our 2-year college, we do a whole lot of things with respect to pathways into 4-year degrees. So an associate's in nursing, or there may be a general education degree in STEM that leads to biology or chemistry and mathematics. And then at the 4-year campus, the cost is phenomenal. Students can attend the University of the District of Columbia depending on their credit hours and where they come from, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a year. So they're not as strapped with the debt. But I think the significant piece is the clientele that we serve. Most of our students are first generation. They're not the traditional 18 to 22-year-olds. We have a lot of returning learners in the district coming back because they've had to stop out for whatever reason. And so when you think about the average age of the student at the University of the District of Columbia, it's 28. And so we're having to meet needs in a more defined, more creative way.
Now, Dr. Potter, the Higher Education Act they're looking at reauthorization of that act. What would you like to see in the reauthorization?
Honestly, when I think about first-generation college students, I want to see an increase in Pell. And some are Pell, quite frankly, because our students have to go to school year-round. Many of them are working 2 part-time jobs or a full-time job, not just to support themselves, but their families. And the reality is that everything that we can do as a country to increase Pell, to reduce the cost, those are the kinds of things that will be significant.
The Orange Man has in deference to Malik, I won't call him the orange orangutan. The orangutan lobby has asked me not to do that. But the Orange Man is trying to go up in the Pell money and use it and divert some of it. I don't want to get you on a political bandwagon, but what do you say about that?
I really think that sometimes people are making decisions without information. And the reality for me is that before decisions are made, we have three branches of government. And, the executive branch can put forward what it is that they want, but the legislative branch needs to act according to how people voted for them. And so that would be kind of my balance, if you will. The idea that acting without information leads to uninformed decisions.
Dr. Potter, you're so diplomatic. I love it. I'm going to bring my panel into the conversation. Cleo Monago, you posted something today on Facebook about increased graduation rates for young black men in Chicago. And this really fits into some of what Dr. Potter is talking about. Tell us a bit about the story about how young black men are graduating more frequently in Chicago than they were, let's say, a decade ago.
Well, I think it's important to highlight that type of information because, as I said in my post, you won't hear it on CNN or ABC or the other channels that this is occurring. Or we hear about Chicago that people are getting shot. But there's some successful programs on the high school and college level in Chicago that are leading to disproportionate amounts of black men and women graduating to college.
It's like a
level.
10% gap over a 10-year period from 63 to like 75. Yeah.
And what's significant or relevant to that is how these schools have implemented cultural affirmation and getting the young people to feel good about living in the body that they live in so they can be focused enough to concentrate on the cognitive information that's coming because instead of being distracted by self-doubt. And I was wondering while you were speaking, here in D.C., do you have programs that address organic intelligence and cultural affirmation and those kinds of elements to help keep our people connected to academics?
So I would say, having been on the job for 90 days, there are
whole 90 days.
A whole 90 days.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I think that we find cultural affirmation not only in the classroom but outside of the classroom.
Absolutely.
Right? Students spend only about 30% of their time in a college education in the classroom. It's about what are we doing outside of the classroom? What are those wraparound services? And fortunately, the University of the District of Columbia we're responding in a proactive way, right? We are creating the spaces for commuter students to be able to sit in the library and study so that they don't have to detach themselves from the campus to go home. We are also looking at, how do you build in Women's History Month activities and Black History Month activities and Native American History Month activities and tie that to the curriculum so that there's the co-curricular aspect of rounding out what our students are having. And so I think in many regards, because our students are not the 18 to 22-year-olds, we are very proactive and intentional about what it is that we're trying to deliver in the wraparound services.
Kelly, Dr. Potter just talked about Women's History Month, and there's some real challenges that women are having in terms of matriculating in higher education, especially single moms, women who have other kinds of challenges. One of the challenges I found when I was president at Bennett is that how do you provide childcare for students? What's your perspective? You've been so passionate in talking about women's issues, so tell me your perspective on how, with all this financial aid trauma, women can matriculate and, frankly, thrive.
I think that the approach that Dr. Potter is taking from a holistic perspective is absolutely brilliant because you have to take in consideration exactly what your students need. And if a large body of your student population is women, what do women need? You need childcare. You need access to feminine products in the restroom. You need adequate feminine products in the restroom. You need education on sexual ed. I know that with UDC, the age is a lot higher in terms of the average age, so I'm sure they know. But like just traditional schooling, some of these kids are coming in from, who knows where. They didn't
Young people, they don't like to be called kids.
You're a kid.
They do not like to be called kids.
You're a baby. Young adults, I apologize. But at the same time, nevertheless, even though they did just come through K through 12, a lot of them don't know about their own bodies yet, and this is actually the prime time that they're about to go explore them. So having the resources to feel safe enough to ask those questions to somebody who knows what they're talking about, that's definitely something that women could benefit from. I would also encourage, self-care techniques. I know a lot of young women who were in undergrad, at least when I was there, dealt with depression, dealt with, some really traumatic things, including rape and molestation and things like that. Having a safe space to talk about those things on top of, more curricula about women, that's definitely something that could be taken into consideration.
Well, one of the things UDC does, and I'm a member of the UDC family through my television program, Malvo, exclamation point, because whenever you see me, there is an exclamation point.
True.
But in any case, one of the things that UDC does is that there's a Center for Diversity and Inclusion that really does, a young sister, Trinice McNally, really has done a lot of really great work in providing those kind of services. Now, Malik, you and Dr. Potter are homeboys.
Yes.
So
Mississippi, even went to college together in Alabama. Well, I have to say, just right off the bat, that we are so proud of you.
Well, thank you.
We are so proud of you. And the fact
so
that
Malik will behave for you. He ain't been behaving for me, but he'll behave for you.
I mean, your credentials speak for themselves, but the fact that you brought that talent to the University of the District of Columbia, which happens to be the school that I actually finally received my degree from, because I'm one of those who went back later on in life. And so the steps that UDC has taken have been tremendous, and I so value you being there. So I just want to say, from Mississippi, thank you, brother. But to your point, you raised a very good point about exploring other avenues as far as just our education. In the District of Columbia here, they just have an infrastructure academy. And what that does, it trains them for a lot of the vocational. So whether you're talking about plumbing, carpentry, electric work, these are actual. I have a friend of mine, Perry, who is participating in the district's apprenticeship program. Perry's from Southeast DC, Condon Terrace. Perry's from Southeast DC, but this brother is making a life for himself and his family by applying, and he's actively engaged in it. He does construction, he does plumbing, but this brother is proud of the work that he does. And so if we can just get more of those type of opportunities out there, you can make a middle-class living outside of just graduating from college. And so these type of vocational trades, I think, are just
to be.
Well,
once upon a
Dr.
time.
Melba, I want to mention something real quickly. You probably already know, I just met you, so I don't know how much you know, but it's clear you know a whole lot.
Well, I wanted the two of you to be together because I thought there was a lot of synergy.
But you mentioned that there's a small element of time that people spend in school compared to their whole lives. And what I want to just underscore is that the system does not affirm cultural affirmation. Right. It does not make black culture affirmation an accessible thing like Starbucks or whatever else is going on in the culture. Sometimes people discover that opportunity through a great teacher that they finally met through these opportunities. And I think it's important to give students the equipment to be able to have critical analysis outside of school as a way of life, particularly as black people in a white supremacist biased society, so they can thrive and navigate through here and still have their skin. Literally and racially.
And Dr. Potter, we're gonna.
Did that make any sense?
Yeah.
It made enormous sense, and I want to roll it back to have you comment both on what Cleo said and to bring us back to the student loan issue. Right. Because when you talked about Perry, I don't know how much loan debt Perry had to take, if he had to take any. So, Dr. Potter, both cultural affirmation and financial ability. How do you, as the chief academic officer at the University of the District of Columbia, put these things together? And what and what would you tell our viewers about what they must do to ensure that things can get better?
So on the issue of cultural affirmation, I have to issue the disclaimer that they're not just going to get it in higher ed. It's got to start at home.
Well,
it's got to start at home. Not even in the K through 12. It's got to start at home. And if I didn't learn anything as a kid, I was taught you need to read, and if we couldn't afford certain kinds of privileged programs, we went to the free programs at the library because you could go there and get a book. And my grandmother would always say, if you want to hide something from a put it in a book because we don't read.
But that's just not the truth. I hate that adage because I hate that adage because 1836 North Carolina law, to teach a slave to read, is to incite dissatisfaction to the detriment of the general population.
Absolutely.
A white person who taught a black person to read could be fined up to $200 in 1836, which was a googob's worth of money. A black person could be flogged or jailed for
Or
teaching
lynched.
another black person.
Or killed.
Yes, people were blinded because they learned how to read. I don't know where we got that from. We probably got it clear from white people.
Probably.
Yeah, anyway, continue, Dr. Potter. I'm sorry.
I think it's also important to understand that whatever enrichment programs that the churches are providing, that the community-based organizations are providing, public-private partnerships are absolutely essential. And you really have to pull organizations in that look like you, who think like you, to create those partnerships. Because if you are trying to fleet to the suburbs and find that, it's going to be very kind of disconnected. And so the reality for me is that it's at every developmental level of the child's experience. It's the community, it's the home, it's the school, it's the social organizations that really instill cultural affirmation. Because I don't think that you're going to get it in one setting or in a particular kind of way. The other piece that we're talking about is this debt, right? And the reality is that students are making wise choices. Families are making wise choices. If you look at the demographic shifts in the U.S. today, black and brown kids are not going to the 4-year institutions first. They're going to the 2-year institutions because it's about a question of affordability. And it's also about a question of access, right? And this notion of privilege and walking away from whatever opportunities that are laying on the table, people are not willing to sell their souls up the river anymore because of a price tag. And so I would say that we really have to get back to the real issues that are being debated by some of the Democratic candidates, not all of them, but what really makes sense for college tuition or higher education in this country. And I'm not suggesting that there is a one-size-fits-all, but we really need to begin to have the serious conversations if those at the bottom are to climb.
Dr. Potter, thought-provoking. Thank you very much. We're going to move on right quick. We've talked before about how young black people are punished more often and more severely than whites. A Virginia newspaper has found that more than half of the state's disorderly conduct charges were filed against black men and women. The Daily Press and Newport News reported last week that more than 2,500 disorderly conduct charges were filed by police in Virginia last year. The numbers show that Black Virginians are charged disproportionately at higher rates than prosecutors statewide are less inclined to drop the charges against blacks than whites. There was also an ACLU report that was released this week about what happens in the District of Columbia. Black people more likely to be arrested. 99% of the people arrested for gambling were black. 76% of those with noise violations were black. And we go down the list. So, Clea, what's up with this? We know what's up with this, but what's up with this?
Well, we know what's up with this. It's the same old thing.
Same smell, different flavor?
Yeah, but I want to take the opportunity to say something since my mouth was moving. That I was wondering, because I think this is all relevant, if parenting could become an academic science. Because I'm inspired by saying that because you said, and pardon me for going back, but it's still all relevant to me in terms of the big picture. You mentioned the importance of it starting at home, and I agree with that 100%, but I can tell you from experience and from research and from national surveys that most black children are not getting that at home. The curriculum is go to school, get a good education, go to church and get a job. That's the curriculum. Not learn to critically analyze white supremacy so you will not internalize a myth of your irrelevance because the media keeps on implying that.
Okay, Brother Man, did you hear me when I say we're kind of running out of time?
Okay, but we need the parents to know how to raise black children. They need to get degrees in it, I think.
I agree with you, but let's have Malik say something, because, you always love your people who arrest our people. And in Virginia, they've shown it. In D.C., they've shown it. Disproportionately arrested black people. What you got to say?
Well, and I'm glad you brought up D.C. because, of course, Republicans don't run D.C. And
you just had to say that, didn't you?
Well, I'm just saying, these problems, when we're talking about
the police department though now, right?
But police departments around the nation, I don't think that there's any distinction between how they police themselves here in D.C. versus Virginia or Kentucky or any of the other places. Whatever whatever statistics or data that's out there as far as the violence on black bodies, it's not isolated to any particular city. So it obviously is something that we need to continue to address. And a lot of that is locally, but whatever the federal government can do at its level, then they should continue to do that too.
I'm not sure that under the Orange Man, the federal government is going to do anything useful about arresting disparities. But Kelly, what do you think?
I think that water is wet when you talk about Virginia having, an upsurge in disorderly conduct. People really forgot, I think, because you have articles like this and it feels like people forgot, Virginia was the home of the capital of the Confederacy. So why do you think that just because Northern Virginia got a lot of diversity doesn't mean the rest of that upside down triangle looking state has, doesn't have racial problems? So for me, when I heard about this, I was just like, okay, what's the solution?
Exactly.
What is the solution? And if you don't have a solution, then why write the article?
Well, they don't have solutions. I mean, you have folks.
They never have solutions.
The ACLU report that was released here in D.C. I interviewed the woman who wrote the report on Monday for my show on WPFW, and it was a very thorough report. But again, very thorough report. And all I said is, okay, so now you gave me numbers to what my gut was always thinking.
Right.
You know what? We have run out of time. This has been so much fun. I always love messing with Malik. I really do. But that's it for this edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm Dr. Julianne Malveaux. Thanks for joining us. Roland will be back tomorrow. He's playing golf somewhere. In the meantime, don't forget to sign up for Bring the Funk Fan Club. I mean, for real. If you want to see this kind of programming continue, sign up and contribute. And enjoy your evening. Holla!
Recently in Atlanta for our School Choice is the Black Choice Town Hall event. There was an elementary school in Atlanta, folks. This is a black elementary school. 5% of the school's students were reading on grade level. I'm going to repeat that. In Atlanta, 5% of the children were reading on grade level. So you then have to ask the question, what's going to happen when they're in middle school? What's going to happen when they are in high school? Will they ever be able to catch up? Will they be consigned for the entire life of being behind? You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it. Hey fam, want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered, the blackest show on all of digital, cable, and broadcast. Check out our audio podcast. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. Press play. You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.